on the 12th of November 2024. We will get into our opening karakia. Please feel free to join in. Me noi tātou, let us pray. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hiaki ana te atakura, he tio, he hoka, he hauhu, ti hei, mauri ora. Again, I welcome everybody. I've received no apologies. Is there any apologies to be put? Deputy Mayor Loss?
Yeah, I do believe the Mayor's not going to be here.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Brown. All in favour say aye. I declare that carried. Also want to note that today Councillor Morgan is joining us. Welcome. I've spoken with Councillor Morgan and she's able to ask questions and also participate in debate, but won't be able to vote on any of the papers today before us. Moving over to public comment, thank you, Judy, for circulating the information put forward by Bruce Spedding on behalf of the Eastbourne Community Board ahead of the hui. I take it that all members have had a chance to read the submission. Thank you very much. Judy, if you can also attach it to the minutes for the record, that's much appreciated. I'm now going to move over to item agenda 4 for presentation from Te Ara Whakamoa. Welcome up Bruce Anderson, if you wish to come to the table. So Bruce, over to you. As always, welcome. Thank you for coming and thank you for all the work you do in our community for our people and for our place. Over to you to provide any information that you wish, and then we'll open it up to questions from members of the committee.
Okay, thank you. And thank you everybody for this opportunity again. I'll try and bring you up to date on what's happened since we last talked to you on 2nd of July. At that meeting, we talked to you about our lack of progress to date, but the plans we were making. So what I can tell you is we're actually starting to make a bit of progress now, which is a bit of a relief. And some of the people in this room around this table are fairly familiar with that. So anyway, what we proposed and where we've got to since that meeting is, one, we were going to keep doing our regular updating and try and find ways to put it further out into the community. We've only done a very limited amount of updating since mostly feeding into a very minor feed into Ewan's regular update to the September meeting, but we have started using the updated material in meetings and things like that, so we're getting a sense of how we can use them. Secondly, we said we'd hold a hui with environmental groups to refresh relationships and work on matters of common interest, and we held one of these in August. There were only 11 attendees apart from 3 people from Te Ara Whakamoa, but we did what we wanted to do, including rebuilding some relationships and getting some better information about who was doing what. The third thing we said we were going to do is get started on regular public information sessions and trying to do them about 2 monthly. After the beginning of July, we sat down and worked things through again, developed our thinking a bit further, and we've held 2 public workshops so far, both in Nainai, and they were linked on finding transport solutions. Inclusive of group members, there were about 30 of us at the first meeting, and there was 20 at the second, which only happened 2 weeks ago. I think we can say they were successful, and that's not trying to be modest, that's uncertainty. At the second meeting, 5 working groups were formed to address various issues in the transport sector, and 1 personal project was taken closer to fruition. I'll be following up with the 5 working groups over the next fortnight, but I am sure that 2 at least of them have actually got started and are working happily way together on their projects. So that, I think, was useful. The format of the workshops as we designed them seems sound and replicable, but the big issue is the problem of getting who I think of as the fence-sitting public. along. The people who probably would like to help a bit but don't really know where and how to start. Not just those who are already on climate conscious pathways. So that's a significant issue for us going into the future. And the next thing is the other significant issue, which we said we'd develop a communications plan to underpin all this, get more word out to more people, which could help with things like getting them along. We haven't made any progress on this yet, but the events we've held have been useful in making what we need clearer for us in the new year. The other thing was to hire a part-time researcher secretary. We advertised for that position in August. We had some delays. We are interviewing 2 shortlisted people later this week, and I myself am desperate to have someone in place by Christmas. Our final full group, so we've started doing things. Our final full group meeting for the year is scheduled for 29 November. At that, we'll have a look at what we've done over the last 6 months and how we can plan and move forward into 2025 with more events and more targeting of them. As I guess you will know from what you've just said, the biggest challenges we face really, apart from having the resources to do anything, is getting a communications plan up and running and getting the fence sitters into the room. And I think having that researcher secretary on board will make quite a difference to us in that respect. It would be lovely if we'd had them 9 months ago, but we haven't, so we just go with what we've got. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce, for your comprehensive update. Anyone from the committee wish to ask a question? Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Bruce, and thank you to the team for organising those 2 events in Nainai, which I attended and very much appreciated. Just wondering what's on your horizon for, I guess we're probably looking at next year now, but next in terms of public engagement.
We have a big canvas to cover in the Pathways document, and it's grouped in various areas. Transport was chosen because it was big and it was Nainai to start with. We're going to, next year, probably what we'll aim to do is move across various areas and move to various places, different places in the Hutt to do the workshops. They'll all still be open to wider Hutt, but the idea will be to get people who are interested in that sort of area to help them move forward one way or another. So really, if we can get more public events going, supported by better information going out to them and to the general, or to working groups and the general public. By working groups, I mean climate working groups and the general public about what's happening, and starting to feed information through by whatever means to people so that they know more about what each other's doing. In essence, I think of the information side of it all as what's on for Hutt and climate, as it were, and climate business. And there are lots and lots of good stories there, large numbers of people doing large numbers of things, but the communication side of what we want to do is get that out more thoroughly. And the action side is to get more people involved, hence the workshops. Does that answer your question?
Any further questions? No? Again, Councillor Brown.
Going forward, will your sort of top priority be comms, but is it also a coordination? Like you're talking about, there's a lot of people doing a lot of good things. Is one of the key kaupapa for you just bringing that together and then letting people know what's going on?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Bruce, if you turn your mic on.
Comms is the immediate priority and immediate priority because we need to do some. But yeah, the idea is to help link people and groups together so that it still remains kind of scary to me that when we get together in a room like we did in that first workshop, the biggest thing that happened there was people just talked to each other about what they were doing and were buoyed by that fact. So yes, definitely more than just communication, linking up at least, perhaps some coordination eventually, but that's a bit down the track. Okay.
Awesome. Again, Bruce, thanks for your time, your energy and your effort. It makes a huge difference for all of us in our community, in our cities. So thank you. Members, now moving on to agenda item 5, conflicts of interest. If you have a conflict, can you please declare it now? No, thank you very much. Agenda item 6, our 6-monthly update on the Parks and Reserves activity. Isaac, welcome up to the table. So Isaac, if you don't know, is our Parks and Development Planner and is speaking to this item, and he's filling in as well. So we'll be gracious as well if there's any questions that you can't answer. And we may also defer to Andrew if needs be. But if there's anything you want to say as opening remarks, Isaac, please do so. Then we'll open for questions.
Kia ora, everyone. Thanks for this opportunity to bring this report. My name is Isaac Velasco. I'm Parks and Reserve Planner. I've been in this role for the last 3 months. And yeah, one more time, thanks for the opportunity to bring this 6-monthly report about what the Parks and Reserves team have been done from the Indigenous Biodiversity Strategy and what are the specific actions to achieve the key goals from this strategy. Just a little bit of a background. This strategy was approved late 2023, and it was an action plan also approved by the council that it needs to be followed based on the 8 key focus areas. Due to the financial challenges, not all the strategy could be funded by the long-term plan, but there are some key elements that we're still under development that were funded, which is the new community ranger, which will join soon, and some planting programs. My understanding is this is going to be like an ongoing 6-monthly report to keep you guys updating about like what we're doing, and well, we're going through the specifics now. The Dr. Daniel Donahue he's with me. He's the ecologist from Parks and Reserves, and he also will bring some updates for you guys.
Thank you. So one of our biggest projects has been Māori Tupu, which is our sort of primary environmental restoration project at the moment, which is focused on planting 114,000 native plants this triennium. Over the 23-24 calendar year, we planted 22,000, and for the total up till the end of 24, that was 63,000 plants. So well on the way to 114,000. That does leave quite a big push for this financial year. So we're in the process of ordering an additional 30,000 plants, which will be 20,000 will go into our reserves, so riparian planting, wetlands, and parks. Of the remaining 10,000, we'll donate 5,000 to schools for planting, and then, like we did this year earlier, we had some community gifting days, so residents can also get plants to plant at home. In addition to this, we have also support from the wider community groups who undertake planting every year. So this past winter, they planted 10,000 plants as well. And then we also do infill planting where we're removing problematic trees, invasive weeds, that sort of thing, which accounts for a smaller number, about 1,500 native plants there. So one of the other key focus points is controlling pests, whether it's pest weeds, pest animals, whatever it is. And one of the big problems we're tackling is climbing asparagus. So that has taken hold in much of the reserves. It's quite shade tolerant and quite hard to get rid of. So we're employing a strategic approach to get rid of that. So we've got 10 hectares being cleared at the moment, and that should be completed by the end of this month. The other key plant which we've got our eye on is pampas grass, which looks a lot like toi toi. If you think toi toi is looking particularly sort of present, then that might be pampas that you're seeing. Unfortunately, it dries and stays quite tinder-like for months after it's sprayed, so we're doing monitoring now to locate areas of high presence, which we'll spray leading into winter just to avert that fire risk. Let's see. Other work we've got is also controlling wild pest trees. So we've funded some cherry tree removal in the Western Hills and also pine control in the Eastern Hills. So the cherry tree numbers we don't have at this stage, but 580 pine trees were poisoned or felled this financial year. The last thing I'll talk about is just the pest animal control. So in the last financial year, we had 48 deer removed from our culling program and 3 pigs. That is a lower number than we'd seen previously due to some difficulties basically with site access and just locating high value areas where we could kill a sufficient number. The numbers this year have been looking better, so we've invested in some 4G hunting cameras for the hunters so they can get live feed from certain areas to respond reactively in real time. And there's also the use of thermal drones as well, which have improved things a lot. So for the culls we've done so far, we're averaging 5 to 7 deer per night, which is a big increase. We also have been controlling rabbits. They're under control, so that is a nice little achievement for us compared to some of the other councils, which are really struggling with them. And last point on small mammals. So we've been supporting the predator-free Hutt Valley group. So they've received a number of traps from us throughout the year. And there's an example of one of their trap networks. So they're doing great work, especially in the Western Hills, but also in some of the suburbs like Petone and that as well. And Parks and Reserves is also establishing a trap network in 180 hectares of the Eastern Hills to try and sort of buffer our most pristine ecosystem up there, our key native ecosystem.
Great. Thank you both for the information. Anything from the members for questions? We've got Councillor Parkin, Councillor Shaw, then Councillor Edwards, then Councillor Brown. Let's go down the line.
Kia ora, thank you for your work. I know that a number of community groups are very appreciative of it. To that end, with Māori Tupua program, how can community groups be involved in that planting? We're doing a really good job in terms of leveraging schools and individuals, but I think we're missing that middle ground of community groups that would be interested in doing some of that restoration work themselves. And the other question is about the pampas grass. If you've got it on your property, what's the best way of getting rid of it?
Thank you. So in terms of the community engagement, we have had quite a lot of interest, and there is probably more interest than we have plants to plant. So there are some ways we're sort of looking at increasing that capacity. So working with, there are organisations that actually have funding specifically for plants and just need the community input to actually get them put in. So there's potentially ways to expand that program to tap into some of those other sources. And the other thing we'll be able to do is engage with the community a bit more with an appointed community ranger. So at the moment, we don't have someone specifically holding that role to engage with the community. We're doing it in addition to our other roles, whereas this person will specifically be making those connections. In terms of pampas grass, so it's a fairly easy one to spray. So there are all sorts of things you can get at Mitre 10. You can also contact us at Hutt City Council, and we can likely take care of that as well.
Councillor Shaw.
Well done. There's some great work being done here. And I think the community gifting days of the trees was really well received. a great PR exercise, so thanks for that. But what I want to raise is the animals that eat those natives. So really good to see such a high success rate with the use of the cameras. So does that, what I'm anticipating then in this financial year is that those numbers with the use of the cameras will triple, quadruple, even more. And I'm just wondering about Stokes Valley in particular, where I live. Deer are actually quite common. They walk down my road and some of my neighbours get all of their veggies eaten. So do you target some of the areas to make sure that we're getting these animals knocked off where they're appearing?
So Stokes Valley seems to be particularly problematic, and part of that is the landscape. So it is very hard to get into some of these areas if you're a hunter. So the cameras, the best use is basically for people who have a deer problem. They can contact us and we can set up a camera on their site. So the hunters are very good, and for a lot of these residential sites, they can actually hunt on the site in a way that's very safe and very effective. And so if people have a deer problem, they can contact us and we can hopefully take care of that for them.
So do we advertise that fact? Because I can let the people in my street know when we sight deer. How would they know to get hold of the council?
It's a good question. I'm not sure what our online information is on that, but if it's not advertised online, we should certainly do that. And yes, if anyone directly wants to contact us, they can contact Parks and Reserves, and we'll sort that.
Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, I had a question on a part of the report that you didn't really speak about, and that was to do with local purpose and drainage reserves. And by the way, I agree with your approach that's outlined in the report. But some of us councillors visited Tākiri Mai Te Ata Whānau Ora the other day, where we heard from the He Puawai Trust. Now that's the group that's trying to get going community gardens or almost allotments, British-style allotments for families that want to grow their own food. And I remember, might be some years ago, talk of drainage reserve land, particularly along Black Creek in the back of people's properties in Wainuiomata, land that you couldn't build on or use. It was just sort of fallow land, but it needed to be left fallow so that you had access for drainage purposes. And it seemed to me that there was a possibility there for use of that land for gardens, vegetable growing gardens. Is that a possibility in drainage reserves?
I might say that depends the conditions or the status of that piece of land is currently. And we have a policy that we need to follow, which is kind of like assessments of the ecological quality of the land, and also like the purpose of a specific piece of land. If there are like a minimum impacts, for example, like implementing a veggie garden or something like that, it would be feasible, but they need to go through a process, a little bit technical assessment, and to grant that.
Thanks. Isaac, I'll pass to Andrew as well to add an additional comment.
Thank you, Chair. You might recall when we met with the Kai Collective originally, which was a couple of years ago, one of the things that they asked us for was a stock take of land to understand what was the land that would be available. That's work that's happening in the background, and it's exactly as Isaac said, it's looking at a number of different things about what's appropriate, ecologically appropriate, and what is not potentially going to be used for something else. The main challenge around that is the time it then takes. You would have seen we bought 3 community leases through recently, and a number of officer hours had to go into the process for making that land available. And that's actually the biggest challenge around making land available is obviously identifying as one, but putting it through the process of then getting permission to have community groups use it. We did it recently for He Puawai Trust, and I think it took 9 months to a year to get through the whole process. So I think that's something that we're looking at as to whether there's a way to streamline that. But the stock take of land is something that's happening in the background. it's not a high priority on the Parks and Reserves team's work program, but it is something that they're working on in the background and something we'll be able to bring forward when we've done it.
Thanks, I'm really glad to hear it's on the radar. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
In the report, you've got, due to funding, your priority recently has been Mori Ora planting and the ranger, Point Ranger. I've got two questions. Where's the ranger? Is it recruited? My second question is around, what was my second question? Oh, if you answer that, and I'll follow up.
Yeah, about the new community ranger, the person appointed will start the 28th of November. It's already been hired, and yeah, looking forward to start working with this person.
And the drain on private reserves, if that's not part of, what you can fund at the moment, how are you going to meet those outcomes that are in the strategy?
Yeah, at the moment, what we do in a specific action, and is under our capacities, is like the assessment that we have. If you remember, the council provide parks and reserves, like the possibility to assess under 25 meters the connection of any private drainage or stormwater. So when any new subdivisions came in and request for that, we assess internally with engineers, with planning, with the advisor, and we create like this possibility, or we create this assessment and we approve or reject. This is what's at the moment under our piece of work. But moving forward, yes, we need to create like this specific program to understand where we're going more strategically to achieve more the outcomes.
I know funding, we've just been through the long-term plan, but the monitoring of the stormwater is a big part of it, especially where it's really built up.
Yes, we are aware of that, and what we're trying to achieve with this assessment is try to make that any subdivision or any private goes mostly into our core infrastructure, so we can be easier for us to monitoring, or for everyone involved to monitoring and try to mitigate any impacts or any risks.
Any final question? Councillor Morgan, Councillor Mitchell.
Kia ora, just a question about the wilding pines in the eastern hills. Fantastic 580 area control. Just is that half? Is that full? Like, what does that picture look like? Because I know the work that's going on behind, like Tata College with the wetlands and stuff, and wilding pines was on our radar. So I just wondered how big that issue is.
So that would not be quite the proportion you'd hope it would be. It's there's a lot more to do. The numbers in the past as well have probably been higher than that, because with this we really focused on areas that have already been done to sort of do a mop-up. So usually the numbers would probably be double what we did today, but it was just sort of a go through fine-tooth comb sort of approach.
Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you. And just sticking on the pest plants, the control of climbing asparagus and pampas grass, really great to see that happening. And it mentions in the report 10 hectares of woodland reserve. Is that a particular area of 10 hectares, or is that 10 hectares of small patches all over the city?
So that is 10 continuous hectares. So there's a large patch up in the key native ecosystem where the Te Whiti Riser runs up. So that is not the only climbing asparagus control work we'll do this year, but it's what we've locked in to get contractors rolling as we go.
And in terms of outside of that area, elsewhere in the city, is there a plan for a process for our residents, community groups, or interested individuals in the community to report these things to council as well and have them down to?
So at the moment, people can report sightings of climbing asparagus or a number of other pest weeds via the Report a Problem website. It's not the greatest system for it, because we do need to prioritise, and you're often just not given enough information to know whether one is priority over another. So there's concepts at the moment in terms of how we can enable community groups to actually report them with pictures and things like that to sort of have more eyes and ears out there, because boots on the ground is a real limitation we have in terms of actually assessing what the problems are and where they are.
Passing over to Andrea for additional comment.
We're just going through the CCX project at the moment where we're changing all of our systems around report a problem, and we're currently doing the work to look at what are the categories and what are the key things that people will be reporting. So I'm just thinking as an action from this, I'll follow up on whether that's something we can build in a little more specifically around being able to report as part of that.
Great. Final question, Deputy Mayor Loss.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The report, as everyone said, is great, and it's good to have all this information. In regards to pests and the deer management, I recall ages ago there was talk of a fence doing some work. I haven't seen anything to do with that in the report, but you've got cameras and everything. Just weighing those things up, what's the most effective, do you think?
So the culling and the cameras will only ever achieve so much because we get constant immigration of deer coming in from the wider valleys. So yes, there is an idea for a fence, or several ideas for how you could interrupt that migration and basically protect some of these areas where we wouldn't have to hunt them anymore. And that way we could let the forest regenerate and we could focus the hunting to other areas to alleviate some of the pressure and annoyance to residents. And yeah, so that's a work in progress. But yes, not too much progress just yet, but we're getting there.
Great. Thank you, gents, for answering the questions and coming in today. So now we're going to move the recommendation on page 7 that the committee receives and notes the information in the report. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Is there any debate? I'll then move the recommendation. All in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. I declare that carried. Thank you. We're now on to agenda item 7 on page 17. Welcome up Jeff and Ewan for the report. So Jeff, as you know, we've all read the report, so please take it as so. As if there's any additional information that's not contained in the report, please feel free to share it with us now, and then we'll open for questions.
Kia ora koutou. We have, I'd just like to highlight the correlation between the voucher scheme and the diversion totals going to Earthlink in those graphs. That's very pleasing to see that the voucher scheme is paying dividends in that way. And also the resident satisfaction survey results on page 21 showing that we're heading in the right direction in terms of the satisfaction of the public at large. And yeah, in terms of additional information, we have had initial few bins picked up with the new bin latches on the trucks. So that's early days, but it does seem to be starting to work. So we'll be watching that closely, as well as our other contamination reduction initiatives that are underway.
Thank you for the highlights and the new information, Jeff. Any questions from members? Councillor Mitchell, then Councillor Edwards, then Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Jeff. I hope you've seen it, but I wondered if you had any feedback on the correspondence that came through from Eastbourne on their own trials of collecting some of those, I call them next to recycle items, the ones that we can't put in our curbside bins that there are other pathways for. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, thank you for raising that. Yes, we looked at that initially, and we'd commend the Eastbourne Community Board and Bruce and his initiatives out there. It's really good to see people taking such a keen interest in recycling and keeping materials out of landfill. We've just had a little bit of an initial look at potential costs and ways we could scale it as he suggests. There are some issues in terms of, particularly around collecting batteries in terms of public safety, and we do actually need to be quite careful about how batteries are stockpiled and collected. So we'd need to take that into account. It's certainly something we can continue to look at to see if there's there are more opportunities in terms of using council facilities like the community hubs to stage collections. But we need to look at how we might fund that if it wasn't all volunteer based, and also some of those safety concerns around batteries, and who would manage and oversee that to run successfully across multiple locations. Obviously, in the Eastbourne setting, you've got very strong community buy-in and leadership of that project, so you'd be wanting to facilitate that at other locations to make sure it would succeed. Yeah, those would be the initial thoughts.
Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, I had a similar question. I thought our litter control officer might have the type of vehicle that might be suitable for collection like that, but you're obviously looking into it. My question was on the regional waste management and minimisation plan, and again, it was raised with councillors who went to this meeting at Tākiri Mai Te Ata Whānau Ora, and the feedback was they organised the Wainuiamata Christmas event, Councillor Brown, yeah, and they found the paperwork associated with running an event like that and the demands that are now there that they have recycling and all those kinds of things, which are good things to have, but they found very bureaucratic and long paperwork. Have you had other feedback like that? Is it onerous?
I wouldn't say it was overly onerous. I mean, the idea, of course, is to financially support waste minimisation at events, and so we've been doing that at community events now for the last few months, and it's by and large working very well. I wouldn't describe the paperwork as onerous. They are obliged to have a plan, and we do obviously try and make sure that they, if they're interested in participating in our scheme, able to divert as much material as possible and to receive funding to do that. But certainly we can take that feedback on board, and we can have a look and see if there's a way we can make it less onerous if that's going to be an issue for people.
It would be great if you did take a look at it. And the question was raised that this is an event that happens every year. One would think it'd be relatively similar sorts of things. Once they prepare one plan for it, is it able to be, that plan with adjustments, if they're adjusting anything, be able to be rolled over so you don't have to go through a whole lot of paperwork each time? Is that possible?
I don't see why not making the necessary changes if that plan could be updated, taking account of whatever might be different from year to year. Then that would be, yeah, we could look at that as a way of streamlining a process for a distinct event.
Councillor Shaw. I'll do have additional comment, Ewan. Thank you.
Can I just put some additional commentary on this? So with the waste minimisation plans, what we have found is that some organisations do initially bulk at the requirement to have a waste minimisation plan because they've never had to. So there's kind of a change element to this. And just because it was okay in the past not to have one or to really have enough litter bins, doesn't mean that it's okay now. So I think there's a change element to this, and there's a little bit of pushback on like, why do we need this? But equally, we're also saying, well, you're planning to have toilets at the event, so clearly people need to do their business, and there will be waste if food vendors are there and sell food and other products. So the question then is, well, what happens with that waste? And I think it's more, the plan is really around understanding, well, what are they putting in place? And we're not even requiring recycling. We're actually just saying, you need to be clear how much of waste is generated at the event and what happens with it, and how do we prevent litter from flying around the place. The recycling element or diverting more, that's sort of an added benefit that we would like to see, but it's actually not a minimum requirement for the plan. The minimum requirement is you need to look after the waste and you need to understand what needs to happen with that. And if you have recycling stations, then you need to think about who's going to staff them, because it's very easy to say, we're going to put a couple of recycling bins around the place, but anyone who's gone to an event with recycling bins knows what happens. People just walk past and it just goes in any bin. So having recycling means you need to have additional infrastructure or systems in place so that you actually divert this waste, not just pretend that the bins are there and then it sort of magically happens.
So we're on Councillor Shaw, Councillor Parkin, and then Councillor Brown.
Hi, I have a resident that's very contrite because they had their recycling bin removed. They're a little bit vague about everything. How do they go about getting their bin back, and are they charged for the bin even though they don't have it?
Yes, so they can apply to have their bin back after 6 months if it's been removed. And they are continued to be charged the targeted rate during that time. We don't have a mechanism to alter that, and that's the process that we're currently running. Oh, did you?
Councillor Parkin.
Kia ora. Just wondering, in terms of the waste recycling and management plans, are we giving people exemplars when they apply? And we're requiring them to do this, but are we providing them exemplars so they can actually see what type of thing that they can be setting up?
Yes, we do. So there is an event organizer guide that we have on our website, and then that we make available to organisers if it's a private event, including also a guide on food packaging that is compostable, that actually is compostable, not just claims to be, or how to minimise it through take back or deposit schemes. So there is that guidance available, and we also have in the waste team a resource to help with developing those plans. And for community events, we actually engage a separate provider to basically develop those plans, and we fully fund it. Yeah. What we don't fund, though, is the disposal of waste. So we are funding the development of the plan and also the supporting the infrastructure on the day. What we don't fund is the disposal of waste. And I think that's reasonable because ultimately we also want the providers or the community organisations to buy into this. If it's basically just delivered for free, then it's really difficult to get them to buy into this concept.
Councillor Brown.
So has it changed quite a bit from last year? I supported a large group with the waste, and it, in my head, was onerous. It kept going backwards and forwards for a long time. It was expensive. They had to have staff. They were a group that were always removing their rubbish anyway, and it was onerous, and it did cost them. So has it changed a lot? Because these groups are providing a community good, and it flips to where their priority focuses, and it makes them question whether it's worth doing it. Large scale, maybe Petone can afford it, but average organisation who's running at a loss too, has it changed since last year?
So the provider we use, we're fully funding the development of the plans. So that has changed compared to last year, because I don't think we had that in place last year yet. So I would expect there to be fewer barriers this year than there were last year.
So that includes recycling, because that was not an option last year. They had to do all the recycling and employ staff to do it with the bins and stay at the bins.
Councillor Brown, what I'll suggest is we take that offline. We'll follow it up in the team to look at the particular event, and I can't necessarily comment on what happened last year, but we can follow up and make sure that the barriers are low for this year. I do feel like we've got quite a lot of support for community organisations, but there may or may not be a breakdown in communication, so let's follow up on that.
Great. Any final question on this paper? No? Thank you everyone for the questions, and officers for your responses. I'm now going to move the recommendation on page 17 that the committee receives and notes the update on various solid waste management and minimisation matters. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Parkin. Is there any debate? No? In that case, I put the vote. All in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. I declare it carried. We're now on to agenda item 8, update on Council's climate change work on page 23. Miriam, welcome to the table. As you know, we've read your paper, so if there's anything additional you wish to add or highlight, please do so. Then we're open for questions.
Kia ora koutou. Very quickly, just to note that the briefing that is upcoming in November on the climate adaptation work that's happening regionally, Tom will be coming to present this on the 27th of November. The exact date wasn't in the paper, but we've now got that confirmed. Other than that, happy to take questions.
Brilliant. Any questions from members? Councillor Mitchell?
Yeah, just in terms of I've just lost my place, Low Carbon Acceleration Fund, it's noted in there that there was a promotional event offered to businesses twice and no one had registered to attend. And the Chamber of Commerce, I know, are involved in that particular fund. Is there a plan still to how we can attract businesses to apply to that fund?
Thank you for that question. Yes, so one of the things that that has come after offering that event and not having any uptake is that the relationship with the Chamber, we've asked that if there's any other follow-up questions or inquiries, even though the event didn't go ahead, that they would be funneled through to us. I did, just following the cut-off for this report, we had one inquiry come in last minute on that fund, so I've been able to meet with that group in that time period since and been able to give them some more bespoke advice on the fund. So that was quite a nice outcome to be able to give some more one-on-one information. And we are still intending to run 2 webinars, one focused more at the business community and one more focused at clubs and groups, kind of less businessy, to offer a little bit more support and how they can think about what an application might look like for them and potentially sort of seed some ideas for future funding rounds.
No more questions? Brilliant. I will then move the recommendations, the 2 of them on page 23. 1, that the committee notes the update on climate change work streams currently underway. And 2, notes that the updates are only provided for projects or activities where significant progress has been made or where significant changes have occurred since the previous update on the 4th of September 2024. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Is there any debate? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, I just wanted to share some observations. I think Bruce is gone, but from the Te Ara Whakamua workshops they held up in Nainai, which I attended both of those, and I thought they were really good and catered well to the people who turned up. But just in terms of the many levels on which we need to communicate with our community and just reminding ourselves that people are in very different places on a decarbonisation journey. I think those workshops they hoped would be for people who were at the beginning of a journey and needed some help to make really basic steps. And those aren't the people who turned up to the first workshop. And on reflection, I think that, you know, there'll be a sense of whakamā for people who don't know what to do to then come up in person and tell you, I don't know what to do. Maybe that's a barrier to people. So one thing we need, I think, always is those consistent, really simple messages about simple changes people can make in their lives. And that was a transport-focused one. So next time you're, purchasing a vehicle, consider electric or hybrid or whatever it is, or, those continuous messages about, have you tried public transport? What are the barriers in the way? The people who did turn up to those events, as Bruce mentioned, were people who I think were already on a carbon journey of their own and probably in their own lives and in their own homes don't need that basic advice. What was really interesting, though, was that they kind of pivoted the workshop to make that more about taking action on a bigger scale outside of your home. And when they did that, the people who I think were kind of active in their own lives and in their own homes also had barriers. They didn't know how to take the next step to do something a bit bigger in their community or in their city or what it was. And when we broke into groups on particular issues, one of the things I noticed was that people weren't quite there in understanding the issues enough yet to know what to do about it. So there's still an education piece in play there. And I think actually also just needed some encouragement to be able to take a next step because they possibly hadn't done such a thing before, or yeah, actually just genuinely needed some encouragement to get out there and try and make some change. So yeah, just some observations from those workshops. I think they were very valuable. I think the group who organised them learned a lot, and the people who came learned a lot, but yeah, there's still a lot to be done in terms of the breadth of reach, and it was a really good reminder to me that everyone's somewhere on a journey. They just need help to get to the next step, whatever that is, from wherever they're starting from. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell, for your remarks. Any further debate? I'm now going to put the motion. All in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. I declare it carried. We're now on page 26 for agenda item 9, the draft submission on the government's emission trading scheme consultation. Thanks, Miriam, and Ewan, if you wish to join as well. Over to you both if you wish to highlight anything before we open for comment.
I'll briefly comment on this since I was the one that initiated that. But so most of the information is in the draft submission, but effectively we've got forestry registered under the ETS, and the previous government had introduced a fee which wasn't implemented because it was challenged by the forestry industry, and the new government is now proposing a lower fee, but it is still a fee per hectare. And the submission ultimately is about making it clear that that's a bit of a problem for those that actually would like to permanently set aside that forest as native bush, as in our reserves. And having, while there's obviously a benefit in terms of earning carbon credits, which then can be sold, and then we're using that to recycle that into the Low Carbon Acceleration Fund, having an annual fee is problematic, particularly at a point where you actually, the forest effectively stops growing, or the carbon credits you receive from native bush is reasonably low already anyway, and at some point you get to an equilibrium. So what happens then is that you just end up paying a per hectare fee per year, and there's no net benefit. So the question then is why do we even have forestry in the ETS if that's the case? So ultimately the submission is about proposing an alternative, which is a transaction fee, if you like. So only paying for basically a small fee on top of the revenue that you would get for the sale of those credits, and then in that way funding that part of the system.
Anything from yourself, Miriam, as well? No? Great. Open for questions from members. Great. I'm now going to move the recommendations on page 26. The first one, that the committee notes and receives the memorandum, and 2, approves the draft submission to the government's consultation on resetting the emission trading scheme annual charge for post-1989 forestry participants as attached as Appendix 1 to the memo. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Any debate? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, I did just want to comment that I thought that was a really smart and valid alternative to propose there. People are getting into the ETS game for very different reasons and with very different outcomes. And for some of them, those things are purely financial. So it makes a lot of sense to me to make it a transaction fee, a fee on financial transactions, because that's the only reason some people are involved in this, rather than, as you say, kind of disincentivizing people who are interested in permanent forestry, which is a better environmental outcome. So thank you for the thought that was put into this.
Any further debate? Just thank you for raising it as an opportunity, both as an organisation that holds credits in our forestry, but also as a wider participant in shaping what this looks like going forward. I'm happy to sign it off on behalf of this committee too. So going to put the recommendation. All in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. I declare that carried. We're now on page 29 for the Climate Change and Sustainability Committee Forward Programme for 2024. Open to any questions from members. And if there are no questions, just noting as well, if there are aspects that you wish council to be focusing on for next year that aren't in the work plan, please raise them with Alison, you and myself as soon as possible. Then we can consider them with the capacity that we have and alongside prioritising the work that we've already committed to as well. So I move that the committee receives and notes the forward program attached for 2025, attached as Appendix 1 to the report. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Lewis. All in favour say aye. I declare that carried. Questions? I've received no questions ahead of the meeting. So we're now moving to our closing formalities on agenda item 12. Judy will now put on the screens our closing karakia. Please feel free to join in. Me noi tātou, let us pray. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia I te urutapu nui, kia wātea, kia māma, te ngākau, te tinana, te wairoa I te ara takatū. Ko ia rā e rongo whakahiri ake ki runga, kia wātea, ai rā, ko wātea, hau, pai marire. I declare the meeting closed at 2:56. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone.